The action takes place in the imperial capital, 1,000 years ago in the purgatory of the Secret Thunder. A crowd of people in robes fled from the explosions with screams. Everything was destroyed around. One of the people on his knees crawled up to another man and called him Mr. Magister and said that the monster's attack was too strong and they could not stand it. The Magister replied to the man not to worry and promised not to let the monsters rage. This master turned out to be the first imperial master of the empire, AI Wire. The monster with horns laughed and asked the master if he was really the only hope of people. It was clear that the monster had caused all this mayhem going on around. The monster said that he could kill the so-called brave of the empire with one fist. He also added that their attacks are useless, because monsters will heal in a minute and insignificant little people will not see victory. The Magister said that apparently he would not be able to injure the monster with ordinary attacks, so he had no choice but to explode in order to sacrifice himself. The monster told AI Wire not to bother, because no matter how strong his explosion was, the monster would still be able to heal in the blink of an eye. The Magister shouted that the one who laughs last laughs and exploded. There was a very bright flash of yellow energy. Light illuminated everything for a moment. Two of the men in black robes were able to barely stand on their feet and watched as the light flash from the explosion faded. One of the people asked the second about whether Mr. Magister had won. But suddenly, a terrible hand with long claws appeared from under the ruins. It was the hand of that horned monster. He laughed again and said that people rejoice early, because the so-called explosion of AI Wire could not kill the monster. People began to cry and think that it seems they are powerless and nothing will be able to help them. I was horrified by the power of self-healing that monsters possessed, and people decided that now they were finished. The monster shouted that very soon his body would recover to its previous state, and then he would kill all the survivors. However, the monster noticed that his arm was torn off at the level of the forearm and has not yet recovered. This unpleasant fact scared him a little. At that moment, the Magister's voice was heard. He got up from the rubble and told the monster that he finally noticed what really happened. AI Wire put all his life force into the explosion and in addition used the power of the curse. Thus, from that day on, none of the monsters had the ability to heal anymore. Upon hearing this, the monster was stunned with horror, and then shouted in despair. At that moment, in the city of Jian, in the Chinese medicine shop of Old Man Johan, the guy complained that he had lost again in a video game. He tried to cure the character, but it didn't work out. A window appeared on the screen stating that the player has chosen an undead race, and the magic healing bonus is no longer available at the moment. On the screen was the corpse of a familiar monster. It turned out that everything described above happened in the game. Annoyed by his defeat, the man threw the console on the table and swore. This person turned out to be a 30-year-old Yellow. He complained that the plot of the game is not very good, since the healing power was taken away from the monsters in order to balance the forces. Yellow works as a doctor, but not a simple one, but a doctor of Chinese medicine. However, in the modern world, most people seek medical help in large hospitals, and only uncles and aunts from the roadside light up this shop with their presence. Tired, the man put his head on the table and began to complain that he was already in his 4th decade, and he had neither a girlfriend nor a normal career. Not life, but continuous disappointments. Suddenly, a window with a question appeared on the console screen. The game congratulated Huang on having the opportunity to become a great sorcerer. The game asked about whether the man accepts this offer. The guy decided that if there is still an opportunity to start from the beginning, then he agrees. Suddenly, the guy's thoughts were interrupted by the fact that a beautiful woman, accompanied by 3 bodyguards, looked into his shop. She was looking for Yellow. This girl turned out to be the CEO of Zhen Corporation, Zhen Yuqian. The guy stood up and said that Yellow was his name. He immediately recognized the director of the corporation in the girl, and began to sweat from excitement and nerves. Suddenly the girl bowed and said that she welcomed the divine healer. The bodyguards behind her bowed even lower. Yellow did not expect such a development and was shocked by what was happening. Seeing the misunderstanding on the guy's face, the girl summarized that he apparently did not know that he was a legendary hereditary healer of ancient times, and his family sent the guy to the modern world so that he and his mentor could comprehend the art of healing. The girl also said that now that Yellow has turned 3 decades old, he has achieved perfection in the healing art, and his family gives the guy an inheritance of 10 billion and allows him to marry Zhen. The guy couldn't believe what he was hearing. 10 billion, marriage with the beauty Zhen. All this seemed something not real. However, the guy was glad that the days of his hardships and sufferings were finally over. Zhen happily looked at the man, waiting for an answer to the question of whether he was ready to return to the bosom of the family. The guy said there was nothing to think about, and of course he agreed. Yellow thought that such a thing could only happen in short stories and only a fool would not agree to such a thing. Suddenly, a voice came from the console. He warned that the player had decided to become a great sorcerer and moving to another world would happen in 3 seconds. A blue light emanated from the console, and the energy began to spread throughout the room. The countdown began, at the end of which both the guy and the girl got into the game. They seemed to be sucked in there. An inscription appeared on the console screen that the game had started. This time the action took place in the underground city of Level C, the Dungeon of Despair. Explosions and screams were heard again. Some knight fought with a lot of monsters, gaining experience points. He looked with a grin at everyone he had defeated and called them weaklings. Other knights, dressed almost the same as him, ran up to him from all sides and began to praise him. One of the knights said that the guy beheaded everyone in one sword strike. Calling the guy by the name of AI Nima, he said that he was really strong. The guy, in turn, replied that it was just a bunch of monsters, nothing complicated. Nima added that he had certainly heard that the local dungeons would be easy to pass, but he did not think it would be so easy. For Mr. AI Nim, this dungeon is a mere trifle. Suddenly, a girl with pink hair spoke up. She warned the guys that caution never hurts, because this is still an elite dungeon of the 35th level, and those zombies could only be a bait so that the knights would lose their vigilance. Suddenly, one of the students shouted at the girl that she did not dare to say such a thing and asked her if she really looked down on Mr. PM. The girl immediately began to deny it. The guy began to praise the gentleman, saying that he is clever and cunning, although he is only 24 years old, and he is already a swordsman wizard of their empire of aristocratic origin, has a divine sword of holy flame, the thunderstorm of all dead creatures in this dungeon. The guy concluded by adding that such a great gentleman as AI Nima cannot be afraid of insignificant monsters. AI Nima listened to this speech in his honor with pride and delight. Suddenly, a voice praised what the guy said. Everyone turned sharply to see who was speaking. The girl introduced herself as a ruthless master necromancer. She was a 35th degree boss and her name was Alice. AI Nima realized that from this boss comes a deadly energy not comparable to the midges with which he fought before. The girl wanted to use the deadly sliding kick attack, but she did not reach AI Nima. In response, the guy pierced her with holy flame using his sword. The disciple told the girl that, as he said earlier, their master is strong and there is no one here equal to him in strength. The girl was surprised at how weak this boss was. Suddenly Alice used her powers to summon an army of zombies. They surrounded the knights from all sides. Alice said that her opponent would be drowned in a wave of zombies, calling them stupid little people. AI Nima realized that there were insignificant zombies of the first level in front of him and he could kill them in the blink of an eye. The guy used the destroying blow of the sacred flame and all the zombies died from one blow. Alice did not believe that such a thing was possible. The girl realized that she had lost again and this was her 6th defeat to the adventurer. Apparently, she will not be able to achieve the result that the head of the city demanded. Suddenly the guys noticed that one zombie survived. AI Nima shouted that this could not be, because his sword is deadly to dead creatures and this is some other creature. In front of them was a zombie bear. It became clear that it was yellow. He was screaming in panic and couldn't understand what had happened. He became a zombie hitman and the game asked if his path of becoming a great sorcerer would be successful. Yellow shouted and asked aloud, why is he doing all this? He didn't understand why he had moved to another world just when he was going to marry a beauty and inherit 10 million. At that moment, the system window of the game appeared that the yellow player chose to become a great magician and move to another world. He shouted that he did not want to become a great magician and asked to return him home. But the game said that until the main task is completed, the player cannot return to the original world. AI Nima, watching this, did not understand what was happening. The guy, still in the form of a zombie bear, asked the game about what the main task was and how he could return home. The game said that the guy has 2 options. The first option is to complete the main task and become a great wizard, and the second is to die during the main task, after which the yellow player will mentally return to the original world. The girl with pink hair asked the second student about why this zombie is not moving. The guy told her not to worry, because it's just a small monster of the first level. The girl noted that this zombie easily resisted AI Nima's power, but the guy replied that it happened by accident, and Mr. AI Nima would easily kill him. AI Nima said he would not be defeated this time. But in fact, AI Nima thought about how the zombie was able to resist the attack of the sacred sword. He decided that he would use the sword at full strength next time. The zombie told a man named AI Nima to kill him as soon as possible. Yellow thought that he did not want to try to become a wizard in this world, and it would be better if he was killed and returned home sooner. AI Nima called the bear an insignificant monster of the first level and asked him about how he dared to tease the Great One. The guy with the ball attacked the bear. He used the sacred flame strike. Yellow was already thinking that when he returned home, he would inherit 10 million and marry a beauty. But in the end, he just fell to the ground and didn't die. Yellow was outraged by this development. The game said that Yellow moved into a dead creature, which gives him 99% immunity to physical attacks. Besides, the bear's body is the remains of a special creature that has 99% immunity to all magical attacks. Alice grabbed the bear by the bosom and said that this is the real power of the master of necromancers. Yellow caught himself thinking that the girl smells delicious and he is too close to her face, which makes him embarrassed and blush. The night girl approached AI Nim and said that these zombies are some kind of abnormal, and maybe they should retreat. But the guy angrily shouted at the girl to get her out and pushed her with great force. AI Nima said that today he would thoroughly clarify to the zombies what the consequences of insulting the master were. The knight began to use the essence of the sacred flame. One of the students exclaimed joyfully that their master AI Nim's special ability had finally manifested. It is said that he used this ability only once in order to overwhelm a monster above him by 10 levels. The girl said that this ability spends too much mana and the girl is not sure that AI Nima can withstand it. Yellow thought that he had seen this ability in the game, and with the help of it, the power increases 3 times, and this time AI Nimu will finally kill him. To tease AI Nima, Yellow told him, "Kill me if you can." Alice said that her little zombie voluntarily gives his life to save her. The girl wondered if her summoning ability had increased. AI Nimu shouted that he would give the monster a real hell and went on the attack. He used the Holy Flame Incarnation, but the attack power was too low and the bear survived. AI Nimu said that it was all nonsense and he had not yet shown his full strength, although it was clear that both the knight and the bear were surprised that the second one was still alive. The guy used the attack of the true incarnation of the sacred flame, but this attack was even weaker. Yellow asked him how he, so weak, was trying to go through the entire dungeon. AI Nimu shouted angrily that he had just started. AI Nimu started using the attacks of the true incarnation of the sacred flame one after another, but they were still not enough. The students watching this were surprised and not at all sure that this should be the case. It's been a long time. Alice has already fallen asleep. AI Nimu said that no matter what, he needed to kill this zombie bear. Huang had little life left, and he shouted at the knight to provoke him even more. He said that now the bear will receive the last blow of the true incarnation of the sacred flame. It was obvious that AI Nimu was tired and struggling with the last of his strength. Yellow was already ready to return to his world with relief. But suddenly, as soon as the sword touched the bear, a window came out that the strength of the weapon was at 0 and it was destroyed. The sword crumbled and the bear remained alive. Huang couldn't believe that it was at this very second that the time came for this weapon to break down. Suddenly a game window appeared. It said that the yellow player had been attacked by continuous attacks more than 1,000 times and therefore was awarded a secret title, Past Fire, and Water. The effect of the title is to recover from blows every time. Yellow shook AI Nima by the shoulders and asked him to kill him no matter what, because if he didn't do it now, the bear would fully recover. AI Nimu said that this bear is a real monster and ran home. The guys ran after him and finally shouted that the gentleman would definitely recover and give heat to the monsters. Yellow tried to stop the guys to finish him off, but they had already run away. At that moment Alice woke up and asked the bear if the battle was still going on. Yellow fell to the ground and asked about why all the characters are so weak that even such a small first-level monster like him cannot be killed. He began to cry with grief while Alice watched this with absolute incomprehension of what was happening. He yelled at Alice and said that she had summoned him and now she should bring him back. He started shaking her and screaming. The girl asked to let her go, but the bear did not listen, and she herself shook off his paw from her clothes. She said that the bear is the strongest zombie of all that she called for. He should help her punish adventurers, so she can't let him go. The bear left and said that if so, he would find a way to kill himself. Alice screamed and asked Huang not to leave, but he did not listen to her. Alice said that since he does not obey orders, then let him not be offended. The girl shouted for the bear to stop and he really stood rooted to the spot. He couldn't figure out why his body wasn't moving. Alice said that all the dead souls she summoned obey her orders. She asked Yellow to be smart and help her beat the adventurers. She also added that the zombie is at the first level, but already so strong, not to mention that he is intelligent. But most importantly, he's such a fluffy cutie, unlike other empty-headed zombies, that she can't even let him go. She grabbed him and started hugging him. Yellow noted for himself that this beautiful girl smells so delicious. Suddenly, the girl felt sick and said that it was because the sacred flame sword had inflicted too much damage on her. Yellow volunteered to heal Alice. She told him not to make the girl laugh. The tribe of monsters lost the ability to heal more than 1,000 years ago. According to the calculations of the girl, she will get rid of this wound inflicted on AI Nim only in 20 years. With the words "we'll see about that," the bear pulled off Alice's mantle and bared her wound. He said that he was a divine healer of the Yellow River and did something with the girl's wound. Alice noticed that the feeling of acute pain suddenly disappeared. The bear said that stopping the pain is only the first step. The next one is much more important. The bear had a knife in his hands. He thought that he needed to cut off the burnt skin and flesh, let the blood corroded by the poison of the sacred flame. And the last step is to apply herbal medicine to the wound, which is always at hand at home, and then you just need to bandage the wound. Yellow did all this with the girl's wound. Alice was happy to notice that she really felt better. Huang said that he could still make several decoctions that would speed up recovery, and in less than 10 days the girl would recover completely. Alice told the bear that even though her healing ability was still sealed, he healed her wounds so easily. The girl asked Huang if he was really the monster she had summoned, to which the bear awkwardly replied that he really was the monster that Alice had summoned. The guy decided that there was no way he could tell Alice that he was a hitman. Yellow lied to the girl that her ability had increased so much that she was able to summon him. He decided to change the subject and offered to give Alice a restorative massage. Alice was surprised at this suggestion. Yellow started doing massage and the girl was very pleased. Alice couldn't understand how she could be so pleased with ordinary touches on her shoulders, but it felt like a current was passing through her. Alice thought that her whole body was so light, as if she was fluttering. This feeling was incredible. Bear said that the bone-setting massage of the Huang family is not something that everyone can stand. In addition, the bear used a needle to inject Alice into the points responsible for sleep, so the girl fell to the ground and fell asleep. The bear decided to go on the run and was sure that the girl would not stop him in any way. He remembered again that in his world, 10 billion and a beautiful wife were waiting for him. He ran towards his death, to the exit from the dungeon. But as soon as he came out of the cave, he realized that there was nothing under his feet and he was flying into the abyss. While the bear was flying, he was thinking about who was making a chasm in front of the cave entrance. But to die from jumping into the abyss was actually the fastest death, so Yellow was even glad of such a coincidence. He shouted to the sky that he was already allowed to return to his world. He will fall from heaven to some land, lost one paw, but still remained alive. He got up and his health began to recover immediately. There were some big Cyclops monsters with clubs standing around him. He shouted at them with a request to attack him as soon as possible until his health was fully restored. He shouted at them and tried to somehow attract their attention, but the monsters escaped. The guy started sewing on his severed paw. He was upset that the monsters didn't want to beat him. He decided that since no one wants to beat him, it means he will beat himself. He opened the system window to see with what ability he could beat himself. It turned out that Yellow has quite a lot of abilities. Among them, Ice Ball, Sword of Doom, Fireball, Blade of Night, Regeneration, Rhino Armor, Mutant Attack, and Lightning Bolt. The game said that Yellow's body is special because it possesses all the abilities of the game world. Yellow did not understand how the body of an ordinary teddy bear had so many abilities and bonuses. He decided to immediately put these thoughts out of his head and decide in what way he would be able to kill himself as soon as possible. He shouted into the sky to Purgatory Miley to be killed at least with a cannon, but nothing happened. The game said that before using a high-class spell, it is necessary to pump up the mana reserve. However, Yellow saw perfectly well that he had a high mana reserve. Yellow did not understand why the spell did not work, because it is written that you can use all spells. He sat down on a log and could not understand why it was so easy to die playing the game and so difficult for a hitman to die. Suddenly, Cerberus appeared behind Yellow, but he didn't see it. Yellow sat on a log and thought about how he needed to find another way to die. At that moment, something wet and viscous dripped on his head. Yellow realized that it wasn't raining in the dungeon and decided to see where the water came from. Turning his head, the bear found a three-headed Cerberus above him. The bear quickly realized that this was an elite level 20 crumpled Cerberus. In addition, he uses a special critical attack during the attack. Cerberus grabbed the bear in his mouth, and he sighed with relief at the realization that he was finally going to die. But suddenly, when the dog tried to bite the zombie bear, his fangs crumbled on him, as if on a stone. The dog opened its mouth and Yellow flew to the ground. He started yelling at the dog, urging her to keep biting him. Yellow will again receive some kind of useless ability in his opinion, but there was a chance that at least it does not increase life. The system displayed a window stating that the yellow player received damage during the battle. As a result, an ability called Hard Skin was obtained, which meant that 1% of the damage is reflected during attacks. Cerberus stepped on the bear with all his strength. He flew off to the side. He recognized the attack of the beast and realized that it was an excellent hellfire of Cerberus, which not only makes it possible to control the enemy, but at the same time causes huge damage. The bear was roasting in this flame, but was still alive, so Yellow shouted for the dog to add more flames, because the temperature is not high enough yet. At this time, the three monsters who had previously escaped from the bear were talking to each other. One of the Cyclops said that the little bear has an amazing resistance to fire. He was surprised that Alice's level had increased so much. However, what worried the monsters even more was that Cerberus had gone into combat form. Usually, if Cerberus gets too angry, then he goes into combat form, and in this case, even high-level bosses walk on a string. The energy of Cerberus created threads that wrapped around the bear. Yellow asked the dog about what other abilities the beast has, because he did not meet such in the game. With one movement of the neck, Cerberus pulled the threads and they tore the bear's body, which caused him quite a lot of damage. Yellow noted that Cerberus in this form is especially good, because he was even able to knock out 7 lives in one hit. The bear was glad that he was really dying, but his life was restored again, so he asked the dog to make this blow again. However, Cerberus fell to the ground dead. The game showed a window that the yellow player used the hard skin skill and defeated Cerberus, which is why he reached the 2nd level. Yellow was very upset and annoyed that, apparently, he would never be able to die. The body of Cerberus disappeared and only one glowing object remained on the ground. Yellow picked it up and it turned out to be an animal's fang. An information window popped out that the player received an item, the Cerberus Fang, which had a passive effect in the form of an additional 100 experience points and an additional Hellfire attack. Yellow remembered that the Hellhound's Fang was an important component of high-level Hell armor, but it seemed useless to the bear. Suddenly, Yellow realized that armor increases mana and you just need to put on the right ones. Then you can use even stronger abilities, and the stronger these abilities are, the faster they will kill him. The bear was very happy about this fact. He decided that he should continue fighting with other monsters and look towards the bushes behind which the Cyclops monsters were hiding. Monsters ran screaming from the bear. One of the Cyclops asked the second one to report to Mr. Delosi as soon as possible that Alice's zombie had come to them. The bear did not understand why these Cyclops were running so fast and could not keep up with him, because the stitches on his leg parted. Out of impotence, the bear sat down on the ground and asked the sky if there was any way to kill him quickly. Yellow decided to test the power of his existing abilities. He decided to release a fireball first. The lump of fire in the form of a ball turned out to be very small, and the guy realized that his abilities were still too weak. Suddenly, a huge fireball flew towards the bear, much larger than the one that Huang himself released. The ball hit the bear, but he remained alive again, which was no longer surprised. Suddenly, a very beautiful girl appeared in front of the bear. She was without clothes, her hair was short and short black horns stuck out over her ears. The girl grabbed the bear in her arms. Yellow did not understand why the girl suddenly fell from the sky and was confused by what was happening. The guy realized that after he got into this world, a similar thing often began to happen to him when a beautiful girl pressed him to her chest. Yellow even decided that all his luck, accumulated over 30 years, had moved into the game. The girl opened her eyes and reached for the bear's lips to kiss him. The girl kissed the bear while he blushed with embarrassment. He genuinely couldn't understand what was going on. Suddenly, he realized that he had been bitten by a succubus. Yellow fell to the ground and was absolutely in love. The girl who kissed him turned out to be the boss of the 5th floor of the Dungeon of Despair, a level 41 succubus named Dorothy. The monsters ran up to her and called her mistress. They were very glad that Dorothy had finally arrived. At this time, the bear was lying on the ground in a love trance and thought only about beautiful women. Dorothy told the monsters not to worry, because despite the fact that this time the invaders were quite strong, the girl had already managed to defeat one of them, which means she will be able to defeat the others. But at this point, the monsters interrupted her, saying that actually, in fact, this guy that Dorothy had just bitten was not an invader, but just a zombie monster that fell from the 3rd floor. Huang was still lying on the ground at this time, and all he was thinking about was his future wife Kyan. He promised her that he would return soon and they would inherit 10 billion together. Dorothy, on hearing that she had bitten an ordinary zombie, was furious. She started shaking the bear and shouting at him, asking why this zombie monster was getting in her way. After all, the girl had to spend a succubus bite on him, the rollback of which lasts a very long time. On top of everything else, the girl said that this bite was her first time, and it was clear that this fact confused her a little. Dorothy threw the bear to the ground and shouted that Alice would answer for it. Dorothy, along with the monsters, had already turned around and was about to leave, when suddenly, the bear stood up and asked her to stop. He asked her if she really wanted to leave without killing him. The girl turned around and looked at the bear. She was very surprised and angry by the fact that after such a strong attack, the bear was still alive, and did not sleep forever as it should have. The girl asked the bear about how this is possible, to which Hewing replied that, apparently, he could not catch all the attractiveness of the succubus. One of the monsters said that the bear is not very convincing in his statements. The girl thought about the fact that this insignificant zombie bear forced her to spend so much effort, and also brazenly declares that she is not attractive enough. Dorothy was so angry that she decided that even if she had to spend all the mana, she would still kill him. The bear asked the monsters to kill him if they had any mercy and pity in them. Suddenly, Dorothy stopped her thoughts and asked the bear if he had really just killed himself and if she had imagined it. The bear answered positively and nodded his head. The girl replied that there are 3 strong adventurers nearby who certainly have enough strength to kill zombies in an instant. The bear was delighted and ran in the direction indicated by the succubus. As he was leaving, he said goodbye to Dorothy and said that she was very kind and called her sister. The girl in response wished the bear good luck and smiled sweetly. Dorothy told one of her monster servants that the invaders were too strong this time and needed to call the head for help. The monster said he would do her bidding. The girl was very angry and again shouted after the bear a wish that the adventurers killed him. After that, there was a powerful energy flash and the succubus disappeared. Only 2 magic rabbits remained in her place. 3 adventurers came to this place. The older brother Louis is a level 30, 9th archer. The second brother Sham is a level 40 fire mage, and the third brother Pit is a level 30, 6th tank. One of the brothers swore. Sham told Pit that the succubus was able to escape because he used the fire block and wasted it. The third brother replied that he also did not expect that the girl would be able to escape being in such a state. Louis told his brothers to stop talking and get busy finding a girl sooner. Sham smiled slyly and said that as soon as he grabbed the succubus, he would serve her well. But suddenly the brother stopped because he heard a question. The bear asked them if they were human adventurers invaders. The men looked questioningly at the bear while Dorothy, hiding behind a tree, watched it. She was extremely angry and thought that she wanted to see with her own eyes how they would tear the bear to shreds. One of the brothers asked the other about whether zombies are not found on the 3rd floor and how this bear ended up here. The second replied that it didn't matter and told him to just get the bear out of their way. Yellow spoke up and said that he would give the adventurers a choice of 2 scenarios. In the first case, they quickly kill the bear and continue their journey, and in the second they take out all their equipment with mana and give it to him. The brothers were silent for a few seconds, and then burst into laughter. They had fun with the fact that such a tiny zombie bear cub dares to threaten them. One of the brothers said that he was obviously looking for his death, and therefore the brother was going to end it with him. He used an attack called Divine Sentence, and the sword pierced the bear's body. Dorothy behind the tree held her fists for the adventurer and told him to hit to the fullest. This blow took a lot of health points from the bear, but did not kill. In turn, his brother's attack was reflected from Yellow and hurt him, taking away the same large amount of health. 2 brothers ran up to the third and asked him how he was. The brother replied that he did not understand what kind of magic this zombie used that could hurt him so much. He didn't know why, but when he hit the zombie, he felt a pain in his chest for a moment. Yellow got up from the ground and said that the attack was weak and it looks like the brothers can only give the bear their armor, choosing the second option. One of the brothers shouted that since the bear has nothing to do with physical attacks, then let him taste his charms. With these words, the brother attacked the zombie bear using a special magic attack. My brother was sure that he had finished off the bear and said that it was easy, but he mentally thought that he barely had enough mana for this attack. But after the smoke from the attack dissipated, the bear got up from the ground and took his brother's magic wand with the words that it was not bad. The brother yelled in shock that the bear could not be a zombie because his fire magic did not even leave a scratch on the Yellow. The bear remembered that he had protection from 99% of magical attacks and said that he didn't even know why he was immune to magical attacks and advised his brother to try using physical attacks. Dorothy, who was watching everything that was happening, thought that the zombie bear was really strong. One of the brothers called the bear a monster and shouting that this zombie is invincible, told his brothers to run. The third brother called him a non-entity and said that, apparently, the hope is only on him. He pulled the bowstring on the bow and aimed at the bear. The arrow hit the zombie and an explosion occurred. The bear looked at the third brother holding a bow in his hands and thought that his aura was different from the first two brothers. Apparently he had several talents hidden away. But the bear just needs such a skilled player. Yellow shouted to the third brother to kill him as soon as possible. The brother shouted "Die, monster," and shot an arrow at the bear. It hit the zombie's head and exploded, just like the previous one. The bear got up from the ground and angrily shouted that this attack was also weak. My brother laughed and said that he had just started. Yellow thought with joy and hope that of course his brother had something stronger in store. Suddenly, from the place where the arrow fell on the ground, vines began to grow and wrap around the bear's body. My brother was happy to share that this is his original attack, a trap arrow with a control effect, and asked the zombie bear his opinion about it. Yellow thought that these vines were pulling him tighter and tighter, but the damage was still too low, and it was not enough. My brother yelled in response that his damage was normal. The bear realized that the control effect was the main feature and he was deceived. The brothers decided to technically escape from the battlefield. Yellow was very angry with this development of events and shouted that since the brothers did not know how to kill, then there was nothing to take it up and detain him. Dorothy, who was watching this, was at a loss as to how things turned out. The girl did not understand how it was even possible for an insignificant zombie to defeat this trio alone. At the same time, the bear did not understand why the vine was wrapping around him more and more. Dorothy did not understand why Alice sent such a strong zombie to the 5th floor and decided that the girl wanted to occupy her possessions. Dorothy thought about it a lot and eventually decided that Alice didn't have enough brains for such a thing. Based on this, Dorothy decided that she would use this zombie bear as she pleased. The succubus ran out of her hiding place and happily ran towards the bear. She waved at him and asked how he was doing. In response, Yellow warned her that she needed to be careful because one of the vines was pulling with her. As a result, the vine has already completely wrapped around the girl's body, and the bear screamed that he was about to suffocate. Suddenly, Yellow realized that this was a good outcome of events and asked Dorothy to give him her breasts. He reached for the succubus's breasts and buried his face in them to suffocate, despite the fact that Dorothy tried to stop him and resisted. After a couple of seconds, the bear moved back away from the girl and said out loud that he had completely forgotten that zombies do not need to breathe. The succubus thought about the fact that unfortunately she also fell into this trap, despite her level, and now they will have to wait until the head saves them, because they have no other way out of this situation. The bear screamed that he could not get stuck in this place and miss his death, and began actively trying to get out of the vines. The girl watched the bear with interest and finally asked him what he was going to do. Yellow formed a fire on the end of his hand and said he wanted to set fire to these vines. The girl indignantly asked the bear what he wanted to do. The bear released a small fireball from his hands and launched it at himself, which destroyed the vines, and Yellow fell to the ground. He said out loud that there was very little damage from the fireball, and he didn't like it, to which Dorothy replied that that was all he cared about. Succubus wondered why this zombie can restore hit points, because ordinary zombies do not know how. This prompted the girl to think that the bear is not an ordinary zombie. The zombie was about to leave when he realized that the girl should also be released. He tore the vines and helped Dorothy to get rid of them. The girl fell to the ground and wounds were visible in the places where she was bound by the plant. The bear thanked the girl for telling him about the adventurers. Of course, the bear was sorry that they were so weak that they could not kill him, but he was still grateful to the girl for the tip. Dorothy laughed and said there was nothing to thank her for, but mentally the girl thought that she did not expect that the brothers would not be able to kill the zombie bear. Hewing stated out loud the fact that the girl was injured. The succubus agreed with him. Dorothy also replied that these were just minor wounds that would heal in a few decades. In response to this, the bear jumped indignantly and said that it was terrible. Yellow said he couldn't thank the girl properly, so he would help her heal. Dorothy was surprised that the zombie bear was going to treat her. The bear said that Dorothy's wounds needed to be properly treated. The succubus silently watched the zombies and thought that monsters can't heal wounds, so she became very interested in what exactly he was going to do. After examining the wounds, the bear screamed in horror that there was poison in them. He thought for a while and sadly said that apparently he would have to use a certain method. Dorothy looked at the bear with surprise and incomprehension. Yellow opened his mouth wide and abruptly dug his mouth into the girl's wound. He started sucking out the poison and spitting it out of his mouth on the ground. He performed such actions several times with all the wounds on the girl's body. The bear reassured himself that he was doing it all for her own salvation. The girl screamed so much from what the bear was doing that her sighs could be heard all over the forest, and they even woke Alice sleeping on the 3rd floor. The bear pulled away from the girl and wiped his mouth. Dorothy asked the zombie if he hadn't finished yet, to which he replied that he had already done everything. Yellow again approached the girl, examined her wounds, and said that after that you just need to apply ointment to the wounds and that's it. The bear applied some kind of green ointment to the girl's wounds, and to Dorothy's surprise, she really began to work. The girl's wounds healed and she could not believe her eyes. She told the bear that all monsters are cursed and cannot use magic and herbs in this world in order to heal. Based on this, the girl asked the bear about how he was able to do it. The bear thought that actually these herbs are not from the game world at all, but from the outside real world. Of course, he couldn't say it out loud, so he suggested that the spell had weakened. Dorothy thought about the fact that the bear not only has a powerful fighting force, but also knows how to heal. This made the zombie a very valuable monster. Dorothy hugged the bear and hugged him tightly to her chest and asked how else she could thank Yellow, because he saved her life once again. The succubus thought that if she got this zombie, she would be able to kill adventurers with great ease. The bear at that moment was very confused about his position, namely, how close his face was from Dorothy's chest. He asked the girl if she really agreed to everything. The girl happily answered positively, but in her head she thought that the bear had finally fallen for her hook, and with the help of her succubus power she would be able to control the bear as a puppet. Yellow finally said that he wanted Dorothy to kill him and asked her if she could do it. The succubus was very surprised by such a request from a zombie. The bear said that adventurers are completely useless because they can't kill him at all, but monsters like Dorothy should be much stronger characters capable of killing a zombie bear in no time. He asked the girl if she could call other monsters as strong as her, so that together they would finally kill Yellow. The girl was even more surprised by such a request and politely asked the bear about why he always wants to be killed and is so eager to die. In response, the bear shouted that the girl would not be able to understand what 10 billion and the beautiful wife of the CEO are. Dorothy, hearing such an answer, thought that this zombie was already completely gone. Then the girl realized that this zombie is Alice's compatriot, and therefore as stupid as she is, then it's even better. Dorothy told the bear that the head of the dungeon is very strong and will most likely be able to kill Yellow. The zombie happily asked the girl if she was lying to him, but Dorothy said that before meeting with the head, he should help the girl kill all the adventurers. The girl added that if they are strong enough, they will also be able to kill the bear, and this does not contradict their deal. The bear agreed with the girl, and she added that she would like to ask the bear to examine her wounds again. Hewing was already ready to agree to the deal and shake the girl's hand, and Dorothy was already happily thinking about how she managed to drive the guy into a trap, when suddenly Hewing stopped abruptly. Alice ran at Dorothy and the zombie bear, calling for a crowd of dead people. Alice angrily shouted at Dorothy and asked her about how she dared to capture her zombie. With a battle cry, the girl asked to jump down to the Yellow and succubus and using the kick of the dead man, attacked Dorothy. The girl, in turn, replied to Alice that she was the first to start this battle and grabbed her leg. Dorothy began to beat Alice on the ground, taking away more and more of her health. In the end, the succubus defeated Alice and the girl lay motionless on the ground. The bear, watching all this, thought about why Alice suddenly became the head of the 3rd floor, because she is very weak. At that moment, the girl got up from the ground and said that she had almost won Dorothy, but the succubus sharply replied that she would not allow this to happen. Alice rushed to the bear and hugged him. The girl screamed that even if she couldn't win Dorothy, then this 132nd, whom she called, would definitely be able to do it. The zombie was surprised that he was called 132nd and said that his name was Yellow. Alice said that the bear is the 132nd zombie called to her, and that's why she called him that. At that moment, Yellow thought that Alice really had sawdust in her head. Dorothy grabbed Yellow by the paw, pulled him to her chest and hugged him. She said that despite the fact that Alice had summoned this zombie, giving it to her would be a waste of time. The bear was again embarrassed by his position, but could not deny that he was soft and comfortable. Alice, with tears in her eyes, screamed that the 132nd belonged to her and Dorothy should let him go. The succubus replied that the bear had made a deal with her and Alice should take her hands off him. As a result, both girls pulled the bear on themselves, holding his arms and legs. Yellow shouted at them to stop, but no one listened to him. As a result, they tore the bear apart along the seam on the neck and it flew into 2 parts and fell to the ground. The girls screamed loudly in fright because of what they saw and the whole forest heard it. The monsters who obeyed Dorothy thought again that they did not understand what was happening in the clearing. At this moment, in the human empire, in the capital city of Adenheim, the boss fire dragon of the 75th level visited a tavern called the Blood Moon. The people in the tavern whispered that most likely there was no one among them who would dare, and even be able to kill him. The white-haired knight who entered with the dead boss turned to the tavern owner and asked him if there was a more difficult task for him. It turned out to be the heavenly crusader of the empire of the 85th level, Edward Feng Clarkson. The owner of the tavern said that hunting the fire dragon was their most difficult task and recommended the crusader to go to another tavern. The man was dressed in shining gray armor, his yellow hair was shoulder length, and the front strand was braided. There was a red ruby cross on the chest of Edward's armor. Edward agreed and told the owner to give a reward, after which the guy would go to another tavern. The innkeeper asked the knight to wait a little and left. Men at the tables at the other end of the tavern were whispering about what kind of man entered the tavern in armor and why he was so arrogant. One of the men said that Edward is the strongest bounty hunter in the human empire. The man said that he heard how the knight completed all the tasks related to the killing of demons and, on top of everything else, did not lose to any of them. The second man was surprised by Edward's strength. Suddenly, 3 knights burst into the tavern, one of whom was AI Nimk, and a guy with green hair and a girl with pink hair ran after him. Nimue was still terrified of the terrifying monster he had met in the dungeon. The guy with green hair asked his master to calm down, convincing him that they were safe now. However, AI Nimue asked his subordinate to let him go and said that the monster would catch up with them anyway. Edward asked about what was going on and his question was heard by a girl with pink hair. She recognized the man as Mr. Edward and approached him to tell him the story that happened to them. After the girl finished her story, the whole tavern was shocked by what she heard and could not believe that this trio had lost to some zombie bear. The girl also said that the zombie was not only immune to physical attacks, but he was also invulnerable to magical attacks. At this time, behind the girl's back, the guy with green hair was still trying to calm his master, who was still afraid that the zombie would come back for him. People in the tavern began to shout that what the girl was telling was impossible, and people probably went completely crazy with fear, because usually zombies are destroyed by small fanballs. But the girl began to shout that everything she says is true. Edward thought about the whole story and said that judging by the description, this zombie is really very strong. At that moment, AI Nimue shouted loudly that he was ready to give 1,000 coins to anyone who could kill this zombie, and it didn't matter to him who or what would take up this case. Edward was interested in this offer. He smiled and said that he would take up this case. AI Nimue immediately cheered up and said that he would definitely make this zombie realize his guilt. And his subordinate added that with the help of Mr. Edward, they could easily kill this zombie. Only the girl with pink hair timidly asked if Mr. Edward would really be able to fulfill this assignment. In response to this, the guy with green hair said that Mr. Edward is the strongest knight of the 10 Crusaders and they will be able to go with him on a mission to gain experience. The guy also added that in the end it was Edward who got into a fight with the Demon King himself. At that moment, in the forest, Yellow angrily shouted at Alice and Dorothy for what they had done to him and asked them if they knew how painful it was to break the lower back. The girls awkwardly apologized to the bear. Dorothy swore at Alice and told her that it was better for the zombie to stay with her. The succubus also added that Alice should not forget that the possessions in which they are now belong to Dorothy, and it is not so difficult to beat her in this place. In response to this, Alice said that she was indeed a little weaker than Dorothy in this place, but she had 132nd. The girl said this by pointing her finger at the zombie bear while he stood in incomprehension. The girl ordered the zombie to help her kill this succubus Dorothy faster, and Yellow's body stopped obeying him again, so he went to attack the girl against his will. Alice, pleased with herself, said that it was not for nothing that she called the zombies and she can control them, since the bear belongs to her completely. At this time, Yellow, who still had no control over his body, attacked Dorothy, and the girl asked the bear to let her go. At that moment, a signal was heard from the forest. Dorothy said that this was the signal to call the head of the city and Alice, and the bear should let her go as soon as possible. Alice said that Dorothy was lucky and waved her fingers, released control of the bear. Yellow was able to move on his own again, and the girl turned around and walked towards the city. When she left, she said that she would not leave the zombie to Alice and they would continue their conversation after the succubus met with the head of the city. In response, Alice said that she was not afraid of Dorothy and waved her fists in the air. At this time, Yellow thought that the head of the city is the strongest monster in this place, and this means that the bear has a chance to die again. Alice, Dorothy, and the bear went to the elevator to get to the level where the head of the city is located. Seeing this, the bear indignantly asked if the monsters even had an elevator. Looking to the side, he noticed a creature that was pulling the elevator and realized that the design works on physical strength. Entering the elevator, the three of them headed to the right floor. While the elevator was descending, Alice leaned over to Huang and whispered in his ear that he should not talk too much with their head. In response, the bear asked the girl if the head of the city was really so scary. Alice said that the head is an elite boss of the 65th level, and he has a lot of strength. The bear immediately understood what was going on and decided that in this case, in order to achieve the goal, he should properly annoy the head. The elevator arrived on the 7th floor of the dungeon, in the palace of the head of the city. The palace was truly huge and majestic. In his office sat the owner of the castle, the head of the dungeon of the 65th level, a Tauren steep horn named Minotaur, and tapped his fingers on the table with impatience. Finally, he asked why Alice and Dorothy were still out of place. In response to this, the boss of the first floor, a poisonous slime named Rimuru, replied that apparently an invasion of adventurers had taken place on the 3rd and 5th floors. To this, the boss of the 2nd floor of the 29th level, the Goblin King named George, replied that he understood why Alice was late, calling her an idiot, but was surprised that it took Dorothy so long to cope with the adventurers. The boss of the 5th floor of the 38th level, a bone knight named Jinlagang, said that the dungeon boss should think about replacing Alice and Dorothy, to which the boss of the 6th floor 5 of the 1st level, the vampire queen Lilith, replied that she agreed with Aya. At that moment, the doors to the hall opened and Dorothy and Alice appeared behind them. They apologized to the head for being late. The Minotaur told them to get the girls to their seats as soon as possible, because he has something to say to them. Dorothy and Alice obediently went to their chairs. The bear, seeing the Minotaur, was delighted and realized that he was looking at the head of the Dungeon of Despair. Yellow smiled slyly and thought that he would now appreciate the power of the boss. Yellow shouted the phrase "Special Armor Charms, start," and everyone in the hall turned around at the sound. The bear used an attack called Meteor Fire and directed it at the Minotaur. A huge ball of fire hit the throne on which the boss was sitting and exploded. All the bosses of different floors in a panic did not understand what was happening and who was attacking them. The smoke from the attack dissipated and the Minotaur angrily asked about who dared to attack him so boldly. In response, the bear took a step forward and proudly shouted that he was to blame and the attack was his doing. Dorothy began to beg the head to have mercy on the bear, and Alice at that moment shouted at the zombie and scolded him. The succubus said that this zombie is a subordinate of Alice, and therefore he has problems with his head. The head interrupted Dorothy's excuses and stood up from the throne. Alice was already ready to protect Yellow with her whole body. The girl hugged him and looked at the head in fright. The Minotaur abruptly grabbed the bear in his hand. Alice tried to stop it, but she didn't have the strength. The zombie was so small compared to the head that it fit in his palm. The Minotaur pulled Huang to him and said that he was obviously not a timid person, since he decided to do such a thing. The bear thought to himself that the pressure of the head of the 65th level, which he was now experiencing and about which there are rumors, is really a worthwhile thing. But the zombie only said out loud that he was really as brave as the head said about him. After that, the boss thought that this zombie was exactly what he needed. He put his hand behind his head and told the bear not to be offended by what the Minotaur was going to do. Dorothy and Alice realized that the bear was finished and shouted that the head did not kill him and stopped, but he did not listen to them. However, it turned out that the Minotaur only decided to adjust his glasses on the bridge of his nose in order to read some scripture in the book. The boss carefully read the text, while everyone else, and especially the bear, wondered what was going on. The Minotaur began to write something down in a notebook and spoke aloud: the damaged ceiling, 3,000 magic crystals, the shattered floor, 2,000 magic crystals, the bruised boss, 2,500 magic crystals, the interruption of the meeting, 500 magic crystals. After the Minotaur finished his notes, he presented the bear with a check for 8,000 magic crystals and asked him how he would pay for it, immediately or in installments. The bear was very strong but surprised by what was happening. Alice asked the head to make a discount. In response to this, he pointed to the schedule and said that Alice had the smallest number of beaten adventurers this month, and the Minotaur was even going to cut the girl's salary, and she dared to ask the head for her little zombie. Alice bowed and admitted her guilt. The bear began to shout at the head that everything that was happening was wrong, because the Minotaur usually kills people without batting an eye. And then he suddenly, instead of killing the bear, writes him a debt of 8,000 magic crystals, which is very unprofessional on the part of the head. In response to this, Lilith began to talk about the fact that it is not for nothing that the bear cannot understand such simple things, because he is a subordinate of Alice, who is famous for her small mind. Aya picked up Lilith and said that since the monsters had lost their ability to heal, they couldn't afford to lose a single combat unit. And if they kill the zombie bear, then who will compensate them for the price of the damaged ceiling? In response, the bear got angry and asked the bosses if they were all economists here by chance. The Minotaur, still looking at the notebook, summarized that apparently the zombie bear has no money to pay the losses, so he can arrange an installment plan for 6 months. In this case, the bear will have to pay 1,467 magic crystals per month. Alice hugged the head of the leg and persuaded him to cancel the debt, but he did not even listen to her. Yellow was upset that he couldn't die again, and Alice yelled at him for the large amount of magic crystals she now had to pay the Minotaur. The head took off his glasses, cleared his throat and said that this was the end of the showdown and it was time to move on to more important matters, or rather to what he had gathered them all in this place for. He started talking about calling all the bosses to report one piece of news. The boss said that the Demon King left home again tonight. All the bosses stood in silence and incomprehension. Finally, Goblin King George laughed and said that he thought the news would be much more serious and reminded that this is not the first time the Demon King has run away from home. He also suggested that most likely in about 2 days the bodyguards would find him and bring him home. The bear whispered to Dorothy about how often the Demon King runs away from home, to which the girl replied that this happens quite often, or rather about 3 times a month. The Minotaur said that this time it's not so simple. The bodyguards ran around looking for the Demon King in the palace and even said that they would not force him to eat pepper anymore. The Minotaur said that this escape is very different from the usual escapes of the king, because this time the bodyguards searched the entire area 30 kilometers from the city, but still did not find any traces of him. In addition, before leaving, the Demon King said before leaving that she was going to the Kingdom of People, so most likely the bosses could meet her at the border. In order to facilitate the work of the bosses, the Minotaur drew a portrait of the Demon King. The head snapped his fingers and servants appeared in the hall with a portrait in their hands. They handed the bundle to the other bosses. They unfolded it and looked closely at the portrait. The bear said that the painting is very abstract and not very detailed. Aya said he had a question for the head. In response, the Minotaur allowed him to speak. The skeleton said that now is the peak of the invasion of adventurers, and the head orders all bosses to go look for the Demon King. It turns out that this is not entirely reasonable and safe. The Minotaur said that this was a good question and he had thought about it himself, so he entrusted this task to Alice. The girl was very surprised to hear her name and asked the head about whether she had misheard. The head said that Alice's only advantage is that she can summon zombies who can help her in her search. In response to this, Alice was indignant and said that the summoning spends a lot of mana. The Minotaur said that he would make a discount of 2,000 magic crystals on the fine to the girl, and Alice immediately agreed and said that she would cope with the task. The bear wondered if Alice was really that stupid or pretending. The Minotaur ended the meeting and ordered all bosses to go prepare for the search. The bosses obediently bowed to the head and left the room. The bear finally screamed at the Minotaur not to leave just like that and hit the zombie at least twice, but Alice told her zombie to shut up and held him by the scruff of the neck. The Minotaur turned around at the sound, but Alice managed to close the bear's mouth so that he only made inarticulate grunts and said that they were already going to look for the Demon King. The Minotaur thought about how strange this zombie bear was and went to his chambers. After leaving the castle and finding herself in the forest, Alice gave a strong slap to the zombie. He flew a few meters away from the girl and fell to the ground. Alice with anger shouted at Hewing that it was all because of him and now she has to pay the head a lot of magic crystals, which is her salary for a very long time. The bear, in response, said that perhaps the Minotaur would need help in some other matter and Alice would be able to pay off by doing it. At that moment, Dorothy arrived at Alice and the zombie bear. She hugged the bear and said that this fool Alice can only scold her subordinates. The succubus said it was disgusting behavior. Alice was very angry because of such statements in her direction. Dorothy leaned even closer to the bear's face and told him to always stay close to his little sister. Yellow was embarrassed and replied that he would fulfill the girl's request. Alice snapped her fingers and ordered the bear to attack Dorothy. Yellow shouted that his body was not obeying and began to release fire from his palms directly on the succubus head. The girl's hair was set on fire and she started screaming in panic and waving her arms. Alice grabbed the bear in her arms and shouted that the 132nd belonged to her and she would never give it to Dorothy. The girl took the bear by the hand and led him away from the clearing. Dorothy shouted after them and cursed at Alice. The girl's hair was in a terrible state and she herself was covered in soot and burns. She looked after Alice and the bear with a sly expression on her face and thought that the head did not yet know how strong this zombie was, and sooner or later she would get him into her possession anyway. Walking through the forest, the bear asked Alice about why it suddenly felt cold. The girl stopped and created in her hands a clot of energy resembling a purple glowing sphere. She lowered this clot to the ground, and where she was standing, some patterns and hieroglyphs appeared on the grass in the order of a circle. After that, several dozen zombies appeared, to which Alice gave orders. Thus, the girl called for helpers. Alice gave the zombies leaflets on which the same abstract portrait of the Demon King was drawn and ordered her servants to bring to Alice all the girls who looked like the one depicted in the drawing. The bear watched this with surprise and noticed to himself that these zombies really have the abilities of people. In the end, Alice handed the leaflet with the portrait into Huang's hands and told him to look for the girl too. Alice scolded the bear and said that if he did not find the Demon King, she would punish him severely. Yellow sighed bitterly and agreed with what Alice said. The bear followed the rest of the zombies and reproached Alice with displeasure that all she knows how to command and control others, and she herself is weak to do anything. Suddenly, something dawned on the bear and he stopped. He realized that he could escape from the game while searching for the Demon King, because all the zombies were walking towards some kind of rectangular glowing portal in the form of a door. Heading for the door, the bear realized that these mindless zombies surrounding him seemed to be watching him. But the bear firmly decided that no one would stop him from killing himself and rushed out of the crowd at full speed. Yellow stopped to catch his breath only when he ran so far away that Alice's spell stopped working on him. But it turned out that it's not enough for zombies to simply escape from Alice's control, because killing yourself is also a very difficult task. Suddenly, the bear heard something heavy fall to the ground behind him. He turned around and realized that they were 3 mechanical golems. At first, the zombie was horrified and began to panic, but then he remembered that he needed to die and was glad that he met mechanical golems on his way. The bear even jumped for joy. At this time, the golems looked at him and did not understand why the bear was so happy. The bear remembered that magic cores fall from these hefty machines, which in turn greatly increase mana, and if the bear increases mana, then he can finally kill himself. The bear jumped high and was about to kick one of the golems on the head. At the same time, Yellow shouted, "Magic core, wait for me." However, the bear apparently forgot about how strong mechanical golems are, so instead of hitting one of the machines on the head, he crashed into the palm of a huge golem. The bear bounced off the metal of the golem's palm and fell to the ground with all his strength, even slightly deepening into it, which created a small pit. Getting out of the pit, the bear said that the golem is good at fighting. Yellow shouted to the mechanical golem that he had attacked him and thus he was also being damaged, so sooner or later, the bear would still kill the golem and get the magic core. The golems looked at the bear in bewilderment when he noticed that the health of the cars did not decrease, and this greatly surprised the zombies. At this time, a game window came out that the ability called Hard Skin is not capable of dealing damage to inanimate creatures, which these robots were. The bear said that he didn't care about it and shouted to the golems that in that case, he would kill them one by one and tried to attack the golem again. The robot again pushed the bear away with his palm and it flew into the trees. From there, Yellow shouted that attacking the poor second-level zombie surreptitiously was very mean on the part of the golems. In response, the machines just stared at the bear again uncomprehendingly without saying a word. At this time, AI Nimue with his students and Crusader Edward were walking through the forest in search of a zombie bear cub. The girl caught a sound and told her partner out loud that she had just heard something strange, to which the guy with green hair asked her if she was too tense. AI Nimue at this time, in a friendly way, leaned his hand on Edward's shoulder and told the girl that since this gentleman was with them, even if they were in danger, they should not be afraid, because Edward is very strong and will be able to protect them. In response to this, the Crusader replied that Nimue should not lean on him and looked at the guy with some disgust. Edward asked the 3 adventurers again about how it happened that they lost to a single zombie. Is he really that strong? In response to this, the guy with green hair, quite expressively and waving his arms in different directions, shouted that it was far from an ordinary zombie, 3 meters tall, who is able to sweep them all away with one hand. The girl in response to this asked her partner not to exaggerate the threat. Edward believed everything the adventurer guys said and imagined a huge zombie bear with an intimidating grin and big red glowing eyes. He said that if it was really like that, then it was a serious matter. AI Nimue said that if Edward helps him defeat this zombie, the guy will not only reward him properly, but also ask his parents to recommend him as a knight. Edward was thinking hard when suddenly a noise stopped his train of thought. The man immediately realized that this was the sound of the mechanical golem's stomp, and a second later saw 2 cars running straight at them from the forest. Edward admitted that he was already inflamed by this. The Crusader grabbed the mess, pulled it out of its scabbard, and cut 2 golems in one movement. Red magic cores fell out of the cars, which Edward took for himself. At this time, the green-haired guy told his partner that, as he had said earlier, they were going with Edward, which meant they had nothing to worry about. In response to this, the girl was surprised to realize that the man really cut 2 golems of the 30th level with just one swing of the sword. However, the girl asked why the golems were in such a panic. Did they really meet powerful evil spirits? In response to this, the partner replied that it absolutely did not matter to them whether it was evil or not, because with Edward in the company they are not in danger, and no one can become his opponent. Edward thought that someone from the level of the Demon King could have caused panic on the golems. At this time, the bear, using his final attack, finally finished off the 3rd mechanical golem and reached the 3rd level. Also bear, I finally managed to get a magic core. He picked it up, smashed it, but only 150 mana units were added to it. Yellow was a little sad that such a small amount was added, but he was grateful for that, too. Suddenly the bear heard a woman's voice behind him. She admired the fact that the bear cub was able to single-handedly kill a huge mechanical golem. The girl said it was the first time she had met such an interesting and unusual zombie. The bear turned around and saw the girl. She had purple long hair tied up in 2 high ponytails, 2 large horns were sticking out of her head, and she was wearing a black robe from her clothes. The girl sat on a rock and studied the bear with an attentive gaze. Yellow was surprised that he had met a child and thought that the girl looked pretty weak. The bear ran past the girl and told her that it was very dangerous in this place and advised her to leave here as soon as possible. The girl looked at the zombie in surprise and realized that for some reason he did not recognize her, although he should have. She approached the bear and asked him why he was killing mechanical golems. In response to this, the bear said that he needed a magic monster core that increases mana. The girl said that the bear is just a little zombie, and she asked him why he needed to raise his mana. In response, Yellow briefly cut off that the girl did not need to know about this and continued walking in the direction in which he was walking. The girl stood in front of the bear and started to say something, when suddenly a huge golem appeared behind her. The bear warned the girl about the danger and saved her from the golem attack. Yellow fell to the ground. The girl rushed to the zombie and asked him if he was okay. The bear came to his senses and said that he was fine and ordered the girl to hide behind him. He shouted that this matter concerned only him and rushed to attack the 2 golems. The girl at that time was delighted with the behavior of the little zombie, because in her opinion he sacrificed his life for her. It seemed to her that for the first time she felt safe and protected. The bear kept hitting the golems because he wanted to die. An hour later, the bear finally managed to kill them all, and he happily shouted about it to the whole forest. He stood alone among the piles of debris left over from the mechanical golems and was glad of his victory. But despite the joy of performing such a difficult task, Yellow realized that he was very tired and had already begun to fall over the ground, losing consciousness. The bear cub would have fallen if not for the girl who caught him in time and picked him up in her arms. The girl told the zombie that as a reward for how valiantly he defended her, she would do him a favor. The girl started using the magic blood spell. Red clumps of energy came out of her palm and enveloped the bear's body. Yellow absolutely did not understand what was happening and even shouted. The girl put the bear on the ground. He stood up and began to examine his hands with surprise. The girl proudly stated that she used a magic blood spell on him, which increased the life of the zombie bear, and now he will not die. The girl also added that she forgot to tell the bear something else very important. She introduced herself to him by her name, Edith, and told him that she was the 99th level Demon King. The bear was very surprised and stood rooted to the spot from what he heard.